Okay, so Fox News Digital is learning that the State Department will designate 4 Antifa-linked groups operating in Europe as foreign terrorist organizations. This is going to put them among the likes of ISIS, al-Qaeda, and Hezbollah. And Fox News saying that the 4 Antifa-aligned cells are active in Germany, Italy, and Greece. They are all accused of organizing or carrying out bombings, shootings, and other politically motivated attacks. We do still have retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and host of the Strap podcast, Hal Kempfer, standing by. He, of course, has been joining us. We always ask him about these Antifa-related stories, especially when it's classified as a domestic terrorist group. Back when Antifa was classified as a domestic terrorist group, we had you on, Hal. What's the significance of raising that to an international scale?
Well, also, there's a few things that go with this, but one of the things is that title domestic terrorist, under U.S. law, we don't really have a way. I mean, it's being said by the administration. It's certainly a term that can be used, but we don't have anything that distinguishes legally what a domestic terrorist group is. And so what this does is it takes these other groups, like Antifa in the U.S., we've called it a domestic terrorist group. All right, now we're looking at Germany's Antifa Ost, which is the East Antifa. Even in the name, it kind of infers that it has a connection to the Western Antifa, which is the one that we have here. So that links them to that group. We do know that they communicate globally, in the internet. They communicate, coordinate actions around the world. So if we can pick up on that and pick up the connection between Antifa members here with Antifa members or Antifa-minded or like members or movements in Europe that have been designated international terrorist organizations, that gives more potential legal prosecutorial capability to go after some of the Antifa membership here, particularly that hardcore base. Even though it's a movement and there isn't a formal organization, you can easily do a line and block chart where you can see where the hardcore membership or the hardcore believers are and how they coordinate, orchestrate, lead what the larger movement does. And much of that is through virtual leadership. It gives them the ability to do that. And then, of course, if there's any money going back and forth, we can go after them because they're a, especially designated international terrorist group. If there's any money going back and forth, you can get them on, financing of terrorism and things like that. So in focusing on these groups, and we're not going to do strike missions on terrorists in Greece, Italy, or Germany, all right? But by doing this, it allows us to do some things here. It also allows us to put them on some lists where they would not be able to come to the United States and a variety of other things.
There's questions about how organized, if at all, Antifa is domestically. Is it the same situation with the European version?
For the most part, these groups are called movements. They're not called formal organizations. Now, we used to see the same thing if you want to go back in history, with Black Bloc, which is where these groups kind of go back to. That was a group that they were against the U.S. They were kind of pro-communist, but they're very much against us putting Pershing missiles, nuclear missiles, in Germany. And Black Bloc would come out there and protest, and they would all wear black, and they would not be part of an organized group per se. However, when you start getting into it, you would find that there were some key figures that were kind of orchestrating and leading and coordinating all the activities that were going on. And that's the same thing you see with Antifa today. It's kind of this leaderless resistance model, but when you get into it, it's not really as leaderless as it quite looks. It's just officially or overtly it's leaderless, but behind the scenes, you do find that there is a hardcore base that tends to orchestrate everything that's going on. They talk to each other. They communicate. They communicate throughout Europe, and they communicate from Europe to North America. And that's what this designation does, is allows us to use certain intelligence capabilities, investigative tools to link some extremists, violent extremists in the U.S. with some of these designated international terrorist groups over in Europe.
So I guess my final big question here is, will this in any way, shape, or form have any implications on far-left political groups and organizations in Europe?
That's an interesting question. That's when when I saw this, I go, that is really interesting. Will this change the political dynamic? Now, some of these groups, with Italy being more to the right in terms of political leadership, they might jump on this and kind of put some layers on top of this that would allow for greater cooperation and going after these groups, and it might allow them, through the associations they're in, to maybe go after some other far left politicians or far left political figures that may be associated with these groups. The same thing you might see in Greece, the same thing you might see in Germany, and Germany in particular, because we have, the vice president, amongst others, have come out and talked about how German politics is frustrating to them, and that the far right side of it has seemed to have been almost officially pushed down by the government, yet they've been growing in political popularity amongst the German voters. And so this might add a little wind to their sails as well by allowing a little more pressure to be put on some of the far left side to be certainly not involved with things like Antifa Ost events and things like that.
Hal Kempfer is a retired Marine intelligence officer, national security analyst, and the host of the Strat podcast. Hal, what's coming up on Strat? What's the latest?
Well, funny you should ask. I'm recording a Strat this evening.
Hey.
Hopefully it'll be posted tonight. And I'm actually, I'm going to probably hit a couple of different topics. I'm going to talk about what we just talked about here. I think we're on the cusp of seeing potentially a major military action going on with Venezuela. So I'm going to talk about that. I have covered that in the past. I have some that I just did, which talk about the same sort of thing, but I'm going to get into that again and talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about what could be this grand deal going on in the Middle East, the thing I kind of alluded to, where all these different things could fall into place. And I'm not going to go out there and say this was permanent Middle East peace and it's going to change what's been going on for thousands of years, but it definitely could be a big shift in what's happening in the Middle East, and certainly what the U.S. involvement has been in the Middle East, and what that does for strategically focusing on other parts of the world. For example, the South China Sea and the West Pacific, where we have a little issue there.
Lots to keep track of this week. You can listen to the Strat podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Thanks, Hal. Have a good rest of your weekend.
All right. You too, Austin.